Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Blood Cancer Explained, an ongoing series exploring the blood cancer landscape. In previous episodes, we've discussed how blood cancers and their treatment differ from other forms of cancer. We've also touched on the emotional impact of a diagnosis and how medical and advocacy communities can support patients and their loved ones. We're pleased to welcome you to the series' third installment, hosted by AbbVie.
Hello, my name is Ilke Limonju. I'm the Director of Business Unit Communications and Public Affairs for Oncology at AbbVie. In today's episode of Blood Cancer Explained, we'll focus on what is a lymphoma, sometimes also known as a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We'll talk about how this disease manifests in the body, and we'll talk about its various subtypes. We'll explore the important work of global advocacy organizations in being the champion for patient voices and to help drive future innovation in cancer research. I'd like to introduce the panelists who are joining me today. Lorna Warwick serves as CEO of the Lymphoma Coalition, has more than 20 years of experience in blood cancer advocacy and education in Canada and globally. Kristen Hawthorne serves as a clinical trial nurse navigator at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, also known as the LLS. Lorna and Kristen, can you please tell us more about the work that you do in the lymphoma community and also the broader blood cancer community?
The Coalition is a global network of patient organizations. So we have about 90 organizations in over 50 countries globally. What we do at the Coalition is help those patient organizations make sure they have really good information on lymphomas, as well as make sure that we're sharing amongst ourselves the good programs and education that's being provided. As well, we help with some advocacy efforts.
Kristen, can you introduce yourself and tell us more about the work you do at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, or the LLS, and how specifically you support patients with lymphoma?
Our mission at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society is to cure leukemia, lymphoma, Hodgkin's disease, and myeloma while improving the quality of life of patients and their families. We're also the leading source of free blood cancer information, education, and support for families and healthcare professionals. Through a nationwide grassroots network, we advocate for policies at the state and federal level and a commitment to remove barriers and care for cancer patients.
Lorna, here's an important and foundational question for you, please. Can you tell us more about what is a lymphoma in general terms, and what is important for a patient to know if they have a lymphoma and a specific subtype?
To help you understand, I think oftentimes when people hear it's part of a blood cancer, then you automatically think, okay, so everything is happening in the blood. And lymphoma is a wee bit different because you're actually engaging something called the lymphatic system. One of the main roles of that system is it is your immune system. But now those same cells that you're relying on to keep you healthy and fight the cancer have become cancerous. So it's a very complicated thing for your body to try to get over. But because there are so many different subtypes of lymphoma, you actually need to know what your specific type is so that you can get the right information. And so, for instance, if a doctor comes in and she says to you, you have diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, that's what's important. You need to pay attention to those kinds of things to make sure you're getting the right information. And you may wonder why we stress so much that patients should have good information. But we know there is research proving that patients that have good information on their disease are much more likely to have a better overall patient experience. They know what they can self-manage at home and what they need to talk to their doctor about. They have fewer issues with emotional aspects of lymphoma. And those things are also really important as you move through that experience. Is not just always about your physical health, but how you're feeling contributes to how well you're going to cope with your cancer overall.
Kristen, in your role at the LLS, you connect with many lymphoma patients. Can you tell us more about the experiences of these patients and how they differ or not differ from other blood cancer patients?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma can be slow-growing or aggressive. Aggressive non-Hodgkin's lymphoma diagnoses account for about 60% of all cases. As Lorna has noted, there are many different subtypes of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and each subtype that falls under the umbrella of the diagnosis can have profoundly different patient experiences, more so than other blood cancers. Diagnoses like follicular lymphoma or marginal zone lymphoma are known to be indolent or more slow-growing. With these indolent subtypes, many times patients will be on watch and wait or active monitoring, and this is where a patient's labs and symptoms are monitored until the patient meets the requirements to begin treatment. Active monitoring or watch and wait can last months or years, with a physician monitoring your labs and symptoms. In patients with an aggressive form like diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, the rapid progression of the disease and quick onset of symptoms really do make the need to initiate treatment more emergent.
When I'm out talking to patients myself or other members of my company, the community, when I mention the fact that there are cancer types that are indolent, that grow slowly in the body, and that don't necessarily get treated for many, many years, I continue to get looks of surprise, which says to me, there's still an opportunity to help educate not only the patients who are living with these cancers, but the communities that surround them and the general public on this interesting and important distinction with this type of cancer. We know that research is really important to help gather insights on the patient perspective. Lorna, can you tell us more about the research efforts that are being done at the Lymphoma Coalition and any key learnings you've gleaned by engaging patients directly in your research?
When we look at lymphomas, we have about 545,000 people that are diagnosed each year. So this is a big issue. And we're quite lucky in some ways compared to other cancers because there is a lot of ongoing research into lymphoma care and how to find better treatments. One thing Lymphoma Coalition does is every 2 years, so biennially, we conduct a global patient survey. And the whole purpose of the survey is really to learn about that overarching patient experience. What's working well for patients? What isn't working well? Are they having good conversations with their doctors or not? Are all of their needs getting addressed? So not just looking at those medical issues that they may be experiencing as they go through their cancer, but the emotional issues as well that come up for everybody when they hear that word cancer and are diagnosed. And we can also use it to help kind of change some of the systems around research and have conversations around bureaucracy that may go into clinical trials, for instance, or contribute to discussions on guidelines that dictate care.
Well, that sounds like a very robust effort to really understand the patient experience in a real way, in a multidimensional sort of way as well. Kristen, tell us more about the role that the LLS plays in being a champion for the patient voice.
LLS's goal is to really ensure accessible resources for patients and their caregivers, as well as advocate for policies that ensure health equity, advance treatment options, and support those that are affected by blood cancer. As an organization, we really believe that it's best when we're working one-on-one with our patients throughout this journey. So in the Clinical Trial Support Center, we do just that. We work with you throughout your care trajectory, providing really tailored support, understanding your unique barriers to care and your unique diagnosis. The Information Resource Center at LLS is also a great hub for patients to connect with different services we offer. They're a team of highly trained oncology social workers and nurses that can assist you through your blood cancer treatment, help navigate the financial and social challenges that might arise, and give accurate, up-to-date disease education and support information. We also have a network throughout the United States and Canada with local chapters that can help connect you with local support groups, education events, and there are numerous online discussion boards and chats.
Well, that passion for patient care and really being with the patient and their caregiver throughout their journey is really coming through from your voice representing the LLS. Thank you so much. Now I have a question for both of you, Lorna and Kristen. It's all about making sure that the research that is being done in this cancer category is going to lead ultimately to new or better treatment options. Could you help us understand from your perspectives how patient insights can be incorporated into research to help us with that aligned goal of advancing lymphoma care?
In this particular area, I think there's a lot of good things happening. So we do see that more and more patients are actually being included in discussions by investigators when they're starting a trial, or even companies before they think about starting a trial, to really understand what that patient experience is like overall. But, only about just over a quarter of patients globally are actually given more than one option when they start treatment. But when you're looking at those new treatment options, it's not just thinking about how well that drug works, which is very important, of course, but how does the administration of that drug impact whether or not a patient wants to have it or wants to do how many trips to a hospital, or if it's going to interfere too much with your everyday activities. Those kinds of things are also important for researchers to know so that they can actually design something that better matches a patient's lifestyle.
Virtually all of today's standard treatments for cancer are based on previous clinical trials, so patients play such a pivotal role in the advancement of blood cancer treatment. Taking part in a clinical trial is such an important option for some blood cancer patients and really should be discussed with their healthcare team.
One of the objectives of the Blood Cancer Explained program is to help educate patients, caregivers, and the care community on the very basics of what is a blood cancer, and to provide that information in an accessible way to patients and caregivers wherever they are in the world. My first question is for Lorna. Could you give us some examples of how the Lymphoma Coalition is outreaching to patients and caregivers outside of the United States?
For LLS, they can connect with a lot of different doctors to help make sure that their information is completely up to date and credible, has the best information about lymphoma. Because other countries don't have that kind of support, sometimes that's a gap that we fill from Lymphoma Coalition. We make sure that they have good, credible, up-to-date information on the disease, and then they frame it in the way that is best for communicating that information to the patients locally.
Kristen, even in North America, we have tremendous diversity in terms of cultural background, linguistic background. We have people who speak more than one language at home and at work. So can you give us some examples of how the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society reach people in North America in ways that are both culturally and linguistically appropriate?
Absolutely. So we do have 2 members in the Clinical Trial Support Center who are bilingual, as well as bilingual social workers and nurses in the Information Resource Center. We do have a translator line that we can also utilize to be able to translate up to, I believe, 360 different languages. Really, again, trying to make this information accessible and easy to understand to many people across different cultural backgrounds. We also have a very large outreach in the patient and community experience. We have different managers who have specific territories that are really in it with patients and family members in their local arenas, whether that be at their churches or at their clinic, again, offering that support that they might need throughout their diagnosis and treatment.
Well, we're honored to have both Lorna and Kristen here today on Blood Cancer Explained, with the similar goal of helping to educate and create awareness around lymphomas. Thank you both so very much.
Well, thank you so much for having me today and letting me talk about this work that we're all so passionate about.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I hope that you feel encouraged to reach out to advocacy groups and get additional support for your lymphoma diagnosis.
Thank you to our panelists from the Lymphoma Coalition and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society for joining me today on this episode of Blood Cancer Explained. You can find more information on the topics discussed today by visiting the resources available on the Lymphoma Coalition and LLS websites. You can also visit AbbVie.com to discover our other videos and the resources we've developed as part of the Blood Cancer Explained series.
As a reminder, Please note that the educational content of this video is not intended to be taken as medical advice and should not replace the recommendations and advice of your doctor. Please take a moment to review the disclaimer displayed on the screen. Thank you again for joining us.